Welcome to Go Get Great, the podcast for aspiring entrepreneurs and ambitious small business owners. I'm your host, Brittany, owner of Brittany Miller Socials and mother of 3. Go Get Great is all about helping you make life and business work together. You'll learn about the fumbles that helped get me and my guests to where we are today so you don't have to make them. So come join the journey with Go Get Great. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Go Get Great podcast. Today is my birthday, and if you're watching the video version of this, or if you're listening, you can probably tell that I'm not super excited about that. Definitely feigning enthusiasm for the benefit of you listening. So today I turned 30. Spent most of the last 24 hours crying. Like, birthdays are supposed to be a cause for celebration. And honestly, this feels more like a funeral. I'm going to attempt to make it through the rest of this episode without crying, because I'm sure that will not be pleasant for anyone listening. But I wanted to come on and really talk about expectations. I've mentioned it briefly in a few previous episodes, and there was a lot of people that thought it would be a really good topic for a solo episode, and kind of given how I'm feeling today, it felt very appropriate. So we'll see how that goes. So I mentioned that today feels more like a funeral. It feels more like I need to say goodbye to all of the expectations that I had about what my life would look like as a kid, because it definitely doesn't look like that. And I feel like that's kind of a big reason why I feel so sad today. When I was younger, I guess, I had this vision of what my life would look like. And I'm sure there's a quote out there somewhere that says expectations are the killers of joy or something. I think I've heard something like that vaguely. And I guess you kind of have to be in a situation for that to really hit and resonate. And it definitely did. In the last 24 hours or so. So when I was younger, like I said, I always had this vision of my life. And when you're little, you think 30 is old or 40 is old. So by all means, I'm officially in the old category for this vision of mine that I had. But, I assumed that I was gonna, graduate from high school in my teens. I was gonna go to university. Thought I would probably meet someone in university and be married in my early 20s. Have, my kids in my mid to late 20s. Have bought a house first. The kids in my mid to late 20s. And, be like, I don't want to say close to retirement, because I know that that's not necessarily a reality, but that my life would be very on track. It'd be happy. All of these things that you think, when you're younger. And I honestly, I have been so busy lately that, I didn't really have time to process the fact that I was turning 30. I knew it was happening. A couple of my friends have already had birthdays this year who are 30 now. And I remember even last year, one of my acquaintances turned 30, and she was talking about kind of how different it felt. And I was like, oh, what's the big deal? It's just a number. Age is just a number. It's not gonna, it's not gonna bother me. Whatever, it's gonna be fine. And I've been so busy this year having a baby, launching things in my business like courses, and mainly having a baby, and just being so exhausted that the days seem to fly by without really noticing. And then, Luca appeared 2 weeks ago. I don't know, the 18th of May, whenever that was. And we've just been in a whirlwind of not sleeping at night, for me anyway, and trying to rotate naps during the day and still make sure that we're feeding our other kids and trying to function like normal adults, which is hard enough to begin with. It's harder the more kids you have. And I just hadn't really had time to stop and think about it. I've been sad a few times, and I think it kind of all rolled into this. And part of what we've been so busy doing for the last 2 weeks is, I'm gonna say, helping, in air quotes, helping my parents get ready to pull their trailer off the campsite that we've had. And I feel like I've really lost my identity in the last little while. It seems so silly to say that I lost my identity because my parents pulled their trailer off their campsite, but it really does feel like that. And I know it feels silly to say that I lost my identity because my parents pulled their trailer off their campsite, but I grew up camping, and I always thought that my kids would grow up camping too, and that some of what my 30s would look like is owning a trailer and traveling and spending the summer camping while my kids were off from school. And when they told us this year that they were going to do it, I didn't really think much of it because they've been saying that for the last half decade, and they hadn't really done anything about it. But then last weekend, like they actually did it. They pulled their trailer off the campsite. So we went down to the trailer for the last 2 weekends to just kind of get the last little bit of camping in. And it was really hard for me because I could see how much my kids love it. Oh, I love being at the trailer, best day we've had in such a long time. And I really like camping and being outside too. I guess it makes me feel grounded. I don't really spend a lot of time outside when I'm at home. I should. We have a backyard. It just never seem to make it out there. And when I do, it just reminds me of all the gardening and yard work and all this other stuff that we have to do. Whereas being at the trailer, life just feels easier there. It feels simple. The space is so much smaller. You don't have as much crap with you. You know, you're off technology a lot more because the internet and cell phone reception and stuff is spotty. But like, well, at least we tend to eat better there and we spend more time outside. We hang out more as a family. We do all these really nice, positive things that we just don't get to do or don't prioritize at home. And I'm gonna miss that a lot. And I've been trying for a while to get a trailer for our family, but it's expensive. Everything is expensive. I feel like that's been the harsh reality of the last few years. You know, mortgage rates have gone up, groceries have got more expensive, gas has got more expensive. Just in general, it costs more to buy everything. And as an entrepreneur with super unpredictable income, it's really hard to know what is good to invest in when you've been living paycheck to paycheck for as long as we have. We've been living a little bit beyond paycheck to paycheck, actually, which feels even more stressful now. It feels even more stressful now because Grayson's on paternity leave, so it feels like the weight of our financial situation really rests more on my shoulders. And that's a lot of stress. It's a lot more stress than I was thinking it would be. So I feel bad for Grayson that he's been carrying this stress around with him for the last couple of years while I've been working on growing my business. And I think that comes back to expectations as well, which is what I was talking about in the last podcast episode. But I really thought that my business would be more consistent, more reliable, bigger, all of those things, because I'm in like my third year of business now, at like 3.5 years of having worked on Brittany Miller Socials. Having worked in my business, and it's just really not what I expected it to be at all. I mean, truthfully speaking, I haven't made any money this year. It's been 6 months, and I would say my revenue has been less than 5 digits. I don't even think I've cleared 10 grand this year. And like that's revenue. That's not even what I'm paying myself. So it's been challenging. And I keep telling myself, oh, it's going to get better. You just have to hang in there a little bit longer and everything's going to work out. And this next offer that you are going to put out, everyone's going to love it and they're going to invest in it and things are going to be fine. And making this investment is going to be great because it's going to do X, Y, and Z for you. Or working on this project is the best thing for you to be doing right now because it's going to have this sort of return. And it just feels like every time I tell myself it doesn't work out that way. um and I feel like I'm saying that's hard a lot. But it is. It's frustrating and it's annoying and it's debilitating and demotivating at the same time because you work so hard and you pour your heart and soul into all of these things and it doesn't work out the way that you expect that it would often. And I don't even necessarily know that, you know, I don't know what it is. Maybe my prices are too high. Maybe it's not the right time for people. Maybe I'm just not explaining things really well. There's so many things that could contribute to, why things might not go as you expected. And not knowing, I think, is the hardest thing because you're just guessing and you're left to wonder. And I think that's almost worse because, at least for me, I have a very active and frustrating imagination that runs all of these different scenarios through my head. I'm not good enough. I shouldn't be doing this. I should just quit and give up and go back to work, which I really don't want to do. I really don't want to do. But not knowing when things are going to be okay is challenging. It's difficult emotionally. Emotionally, my stress levels are always really high. And like, I knew that being an entrepreneur was not easy when I started. I had a background in business. I know the statistics. Most businesses fail within the first 5 years. Not gonna lie, I guess I overinflated my own ego, going, oh, that won't happen to me. That's not gonna be my problem. I have a background in business. I know what I'm doing. Blah, blah, blah. I told myself all these stories because I needed the confidence and the assurance that things were going to be okay. And that's really not something that I can promise myself or my family, which is, I think, probably the hardest part of all. I just feel like such a failure to them all the time, all the time. The feeling never goes away. And I thought it would. I really thought it would. I thought entrepreneurship would be different. I thought it looked like spending my days with my kids. I thought it looked like having more time to myself, working less hours, making more money, getting to choose the kind of projects that I wanted to work on, traveling. I thought it looked like having my laptop open on a beach, writing an email while my kids played in the sand. I thought it looked like camping in the summer. I thought it looked like Grayson not having to work at a job he hates so that we don't lose our house. I thought it looked like financial freedom and flexibility and all these things that I know everybody wants. And I thought that I would be one of the people that could make it work because I had a background in business and I knew what I was doing. But like I said, you can't promise yourself that because there's so much about being an entrepreneur that you really can't control. You can choose your prices and your offers and how you talk about them and how you show up for yourself and for your clients. And you can do all of these amazing things, but you can't make the economy better. You can't give people more money so that they have the funds to invest in your services. You can't do all of those things. And all of those things, most of those things, are what determine whether your business is successful or not. If you don't have clients coming in and you're not making any money, it's not really a successful business. It's what I talk about on social media. It's what everyone says. And I keep saying the same thing. And I'm not looking at the reality of the situation. That, truthfully, at this point, I don't have a job. I have a really expensive, very time consuming hobby that takes me away from my family way more than I thought it would. And facing that reality was a tough pill to swallow. I don't really know that I've faced it 100%, truthfully. And I think it's made worse by the fact that when you first start out in business, at least most of the time, you're so desperate for clients and income and like proof of concept that you take on all of these projects that don't light you up, that don't pay well, that's for sure, that are super time consuming and they hurt your physical health and they hurt your mental health. And truthfully, they actually slow down your business growth, is what I've come to realize. I know when I first got started, I was helping make brand kits for some of my clients, which is not something that I should be doing. I'm not a designer, not really. Um, I helped clients set up websites, but I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not a copywriter. I don't do those things, so I can't price the services appropriately to compensate for the amount of time that I spend doing it because it takes me longer because it's not a strength that I have. But I spent a lot of time chasing these clients for these projects and then delivering these projects to them because I needed the income. And I mean, like I said, I still need the income. I haven't really made any money this year, but I've also kind of come to the realization that I need to adjust my expectations, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a few minutes. But I guess the reality of it is that even though I have a background in business, I still make all the same mistakes. Well, maybe not all the same, but a lot of the same mistakes that other entrepreneurs make. And that having a background or being an expert in one area of something does not mean that your business will be successful. It doesn't exempt you from the rules and statistics of entrepreneurship. It definitely doesn't exempt you from the emotional roller coaster that it is being an entrepreneur. I don't really know where to go from here. So while all of that is a roller coaster all on its own, entrepreneurship, I've thrown motherhood times four into the mix. I think that's part of the reason that I've been so upset lately is it's probably, I'm really hoping, postpartum, just hormone imbalances while we sort everything out. Like I'm really only 2 weeks and a couple days postpartum. I'll be a little bit longer probably when this episode airs. Um, and then we've had home ownership times two and renovations and the economy. And it just feels like every time I kind of get my sea legs back, something else gets thrown at me and I'm knocked off course all over again. And it's really difficult to kind of keep your head above water in those situations and then also wrestle with the expectations that you have about yourself and your own abilities. And I know I did an episode recently about different types of imposter syndrome with Lauren. And I know I suffer from quite a few of those. One of them is like the overachiever one. I have really high, ridiculously high expectations of myself and what I should be able to accomplish. And that's part of the reason why I feel so much like a failure all the time because, I'll be like, okay, great, I'm going to do these 6 things today, even though realistically it should take me 3 days to do one of the things. So I always feel behind and I feel well, like a failure because I'm not meeting these expectations and milestones and benchmarks that I set for myself. It was supposed to relaunch my profile to profit course 3 weeks ago. I was supposed to have completely built and be starting to launch an email marketing course over the summer, which I have not even touched. And it's like at the time I'm like, oh yeah, all of this is super realistic. And it feels like I set these expectations and milestones and benchmarks in a vacuum, forgetting that, I'm having a baby and that I have 3 kids already and that I'm just tired and worn out and I'm human. I think that's probably the hardest one for me to wrap my brain around is I'm human. Sounds super dumb to say, but I expect to be like some sort of machine that just goes and goes and goes and does and does and does. And that's not realistic. It's not a reality for anyone. But I have such a hard time shutting off my brain when I'm not working. I feel guilty when I'm not working on my business. And when I am working on my business, I feel guilty that I'm not spending time with my kids, which then makes me feel like a failure as a mom. So it doesn't matter what I do in a day, I feel like I'm failing. I don't think there's any time between when I wake up and when I go to bed at night where I don't feel like a failure for something. And I'm really hoping that this isn't how all entrepreneurs feel all the time because it sucks. And I don't know why anyone would want to do this. I don't know why I want to do this some days. And then other days when I don't feel quite as bad. I don't know why people would want to work for somebody else and not have the freedom and flexibility that I don't really have either. Some days are better than others. And I just feel like I'm stuck in the middle of, I don't know, the water. And I'm just getting thrown back and forth all the time. And bringing it back to my expectations, like I said earlier, I thought that, I was going to go to school and get my degree. And I did, although I didn't have the grades that I expected. So I didn't necessarily leave that feeling super accomplished. I hardly dated when I was in university. Felt like a failure for that because I graduated without even being in a serious relationship. Definitely was nowhere near close to getting married. Didn't have a job lined up. Didn't have a job lined up really when I graduated. So I started working at Boston Pizza in St. Thomas, and that's where I met Grayson. And then I kind of felt like my life was back on track. We started dating. We moved in together. We bought a house. I felt like my life was on track a little bit more. We were doing renovations, we were building equity and all of these things that, everyone keeps saying that you're supposed to be doing. I felt like I was adulting better and things were good. And then we had Talia unexpectedly, but that was good. And then somewhere along the lines, my expectations caught back up with me. And I started to question and second guess a lot of the things in our relationship. And then you guys all know that we broke up. So then I really felt off track again, like a failure. Moving back into my parents because that was definitely not in my childhood plans of what my life would look like. That was a hard pill to swallow too. And then we did that for a little while. I was already pregnant with Rhea when we separated. So then I had Rhea. And I still felt like a failure because I was living with my parents. But I loved being a mom. I love my girls. I love all my kids. But life did not look like what I expected it to. And then, to add salt to my own wounds, I bought a house with my ex because who does that? Definitely not what I was expecting my life to look like. And then I started seeing someone, and that didn't work out. So add another one to the failed relationship category. that's definitely didn't help the situation. But the silver lining of that was is that it made me realize that I did want to get back together with Grayson. So got my shit together for that. And I felt like life was on track a little bit more. I had 2 more kids. And that was good. And then I started my business. And then that, like I just mentioned, threw all of these big emotions and expectations at me. And it got hard to juggle. All of the different expectations that I had about what motherhood looked like and what being an entrepreneur looked like, while still trying to deal with the fact that my life did not look like what I thought it was going to. Go to school, meet someone, get married, do some traveling, buy a house, have kids. I wasn't doing things in that order, on that stupid timeline that teenager me thought was realistic and what life needed to look like. So then I tried to cut myself some slack and give myself some grace. And say that it's okay to do things in a different order. That it's okay if my life doesn't look like what I thought it was going to, because kids are young and naive and they don't really know any better. But it's still hard. It's still hard to accept that internally, externally, whatever, even though you know that it's true. I still thought that, even if I wasn't doing things in order, that maybe by, that kind of 30 timeline that I thought of when I was younger, I still would have done all the things. And being so busy with life and everything, it wasn't until last night when I basically got hit by a freight train of these expectations again from my childhood of, hey, Brittany, you're turning 30 in like 6 hours. You can't support your family. You hardly spend any time with your kids. Most people would say your business isn't successful. It's part of the reason why you can't support your kids. You're overweight. You feel like crap because you just had a baby. You're exhausted and emotional. You hardly spend any time with your partner now because life's chaos. Can't fucking afford to travel. Oh, and by the way, you're not married either. So really, what did you accomplish? What the hell have you been working on for the last 5 years? Because you sure as shit didn't meet the goals. And I know I shouldn't be so hard on myself. That if I was talking to a friend, I'd tell them they were being absolutely ridiculous. It doesn't matter how much I can know that. I can't make myself feel it. And like I said, it wasn't until last night that I kind of had these epiphanies. It wasn't until last night that I got hit with this freight train, but I think subconsciously I've been feeling this way for a while. Which is why about a week ago, I said, fuck it, let's get married. We're not married, for the record. Technically, we're not even engaged. I mean, I guess we kind of are. That's a long story. I'll do another podcast episode with Grayson another day, and we can tell you all about that because it's nothing short of dramatic and mostly entertaining for you. But Grayson and I talked about it a little bit, and we were contemplating maybe doing something really small to get married at a family cottage when we go the first week in July. I don't think we're gonna do that now. But anyway, I threw myself into quote unquote wedding planning, and Mom and I went and did a little bit of dress shopping over the last couple days. Did not find a dress. Which again all comes back to these expectations that I have of myself. And I was never the kind to like plan my wedding in advance. Like I always knew that I wanted to get married and that eventually I would have to, but I wasn't the type of teenager that was like, and this is where I'm gonna get married, and this is who I'm gonna marry, and like this is what my wedding and my dress are gonna look like, and blah blah blah. I didn't care about that kind of stuff back then. I still don't really care about that kind of stuff, truthfully. I know that I want to look nice and feel good on my wedding day, but the actual process of planning a wedding feels kind of overwhelming, which is why I wanted to do something super simple, super small, and also something very short notice so that I can't stress about it for a really long period of time because I know that I'm the kind to stress and nitpick over every little detail. And I'm also the kind that wouldn't ask for help. It's not like we could afford a wedding planner anyway. Um, but actually dress shopping with my mom this weekend, I think it almost made it worse. I'm very much a people pleaser, which Grayson likes to remind me that I don't need to be, and I appreciate that he does that. But it's hard to put into practice and hard to listen to that advice, even though you know it's good advice. And I'm trying on all these dresses that I like and I think I look really nice in. And I just sit there listening to my mom going, are you sure? It's so plain, it's so simple. Weddings are about, feeling glamorous and being the center of attention because it's your wedding day. Are you sure you're not going to regret this decision later to get something so plain and simple? It's really hard to sit there and listen to someone that you love and that you look up to second guess every decision that you make and feel like you're not good enough, which I should be so used to. I should be so used to. Because I felt that way for a long time, that it doesn't matter what I do, it's never good enough for my mom. That my brother can do no wrong. And it doesn't matter how hard I try, I can do no right. He lives in their basement. My brother does. I have a house, which, to be fair, some days we can barely afford. And 4 kids. And I'm in a committed relationship, even if I'm not married. And I have so much to be grateful for, and I am. I really am. But it's never felt like enough for my mom. I know she loves her grandkids, and I know she's proud of me for being the first one in our family to graduate from university. And I know these things. It still doesn't feel like enough. It's like, how can your brain know these things, but you can't make your body feel them? And like I said, all of this is just kind of snowballed, and I've been ignoring it. And I think I've been running from my problems and subconsciously trying to avoid the fact that I'm turning 30. And I think that's why I decided I wanted to get married so soon without notice, without even technically being engaged. Because I think somewhere in the back of my mind, my brain knew that I was struggling with this transition of turning 30 and having not accomplished so many of these things, not having traveled, not being married, not having a successful business. And I don't want to do things because I feel like I should do them or that I'm expected to do them. Like I said, I've done a lot of things that don't make sense. Moving in with my boyfriend after 6 months, buying a house with him, having kids out of wedlock, which is very common nowadays, actually, but I thought my mom was going to have a heart attack. Starting a business and choosing not to go back to work after having a baby, putting Grayson on paternity leave when we have no money. We do a lot of things that don't make sense or that are unexpected. But it always feels so heavy listening to everyone else and their expectations of what my life should look like, when I have my own very high expectations of what my life should look like already. And it's really hard to balance, like I said, all of those expectations, which is why today feels more like a funeral than a celebration for my birthday. I feel like I need to mourn the life that I thought I was supposed to have and didn't before I can move on and celebrate the life that I do have that I'm grateful for. And it feels really weird to think that I have to mourn what I didn't have before I can celebrate what I do have. But I don't really see any other way to kind of move through these feelings and emotions. I don't really know how else to process them. I don't know how to change my expectations without first acknowledging what they were and why they're not right for me anymore. And like I said, I know that I should forgive myself, not because I did anything wrong, but because I'm so hard on myself and I shouldn't be. Because I have done a lot of things that I should be really proud of and should feel accomplished for. But it just never feels like enough for me, for those around me. And I think that's the hardest part of expectations, because even when you know that they're not right, they're so hard to let go of. So before I start crying even more, and mainly because my kids are back and it's going to be very loud now, I'm going to wrap up this episode. If it even makes it to air and you've listened to it, thank you for listening. This was a little bit of therapy for me, but I just want you guys to know that you're not alone if you're feeling these things. And if you ever want to talk about it, my inbox is always open, because it's really hard to deal with these things in isolation. And if it weren't for Grayson, I would have given up a long time ago, because I can't handle this level of stress on my own. And if it wasn't for him, I would have shut my business down and gone back to work a long time ago. But he believes in me and what I'm doing. Most days I don't know why, but I'm so grateful that he does. And I keep hoping that all of these expectations and realities that I see online about working from a beach and spending time with your kids, having financial freedom, I really hope that if I stick it out, we'll see some of those things. And I hope for those of you that are also entrepreneurs and moms, and if you're feeling like things are really heavy and really hard and really difficult, I hope that this helps you get through those times, because I think we've all been there. And I think most of us are just afraid to talk about it, mostly because it makes it real and we get emotional. And I feel like most moms try and hide their emotions. But because society doesn't think that it's acceptable for us to feel this way, that we're not allowed to have hard days with our kids, we're not allowed to complain about it, that we're just supposed to be grateful all the time. And you can't be grateful all the time. You stop feeling grateful at some point unless you have times where you don't feel grateful. Without chaos, there is no order. I've always really liked that quote because it reminds you that you have to go through the bad to appreciate the good. And you have to have experienced the good to know when it's bad, but also know that it's not going to stay like that forever, because nothing ever stays the same forever. So again, thank you guys so much for listening. Excuse me. I'm sorry I was such a sad sack today. And like I said, I just hope that you know that if you're ever struggling with motherhood or entrepreneurship or anything else and you want to talk, I'm always here. I'd love to be someone's sounding board and help you get through some of these harder times, because when we're feeling this way, help and support is the only thing that can get us through. So thanks. And I will see you guys again next week on the Go Get Great podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Go Get Great. I hope you found some useful tips and tricks that can help you make life and business work together. If what I said resonates with you, please share it on social media, and don't forget to tag at Brittany Miller's socials so that I can celebrate you for taking those first steps towards achieving greatness. Remember, success doesn't happen overnight. It takes dedication, hard work, and a lot of spirit. So don't be afraid to dream big and go after what you want. Keep striving for greatness. You get closer with every step forward, no matter how small they may seem. Until next time, go get great.